Good evening. I'm sure you know that, to me, this class has been a beautiful one. The depth of consciousness of the students has really brought forth the depth of the message. And it is going to be necessary for you, in order to receive the greatest benefit from it, to study these tapes as seriously and as often as possible. When the Master taught, there were very few capable of reading and writing, and very few notes were made of what he said. It was 30 years after the crucifixion before the first of the Gospels was written. For 30 years they had no written message of the Master except a few little notes that some of the disciples had. Of course, it is no wonder that the Gospels themselves are not in agreement with each other on all points. In fact, they differ on many points. And they have been translated from Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, Latin, one language to another, finally into English. And it's no wonder that there are discrepancies there. We have an illustration of that in our modern day translating. There are no metaphysical works translated into German correctly. None whatsoever. And the reason is that the German language has no word for mind. And mind is the most important word in the metaphysical world. And the correct understanding of the meaning of mind is important. And here's a language that doesn't even have the word, and it has no other word that would take its place. Therefore, each translator selects some word that they think comes close to describing what mind means in English, and the result is that none of them really do. You can see what a tremendous disadvantage you would be under if you had no understanding of the word mind. All of your metaphysical books would be difficult for you without that one word. Today we don't have that difficulty. Today nobody has to trust to their memory. We don't even have to trust to a stenographer, because the actual words are taken down, sentences, paragraphs. The message is taken down complete, full, at the very moment that it is spoken, so that there isn't a single word missing, and the inflection of the voice carries its meaning. Then, in transcribing into print, there is little or no reason for any mistake, as long as we are in the English language. Now, when the Master gave a message, the multitudes had to take it home and think about it. But actually, they had to get home and prepare an evening meal. or the fishermen had to get out on their boats. And so you can realize how difficult it must have been really to absorb the message of the Master. Today, no one has to rely on their memory. You can go home, you can take the books, you can find ways to make the recordings available, and so have the message exactly as it is. And the reason this is important is this. A message, a principle, is of no value at all as a principle. It is only of value as you know the principle and live with it and live by it. It is your own ability to grasp its meaning, put it into practice, that makes the principle of value to you. It doesn't differ from the principle of automobiling or airplaning. These two are principles, but you can't do anything with those principles until somebody hooks them up into machines. And so with these principles, you wouldn't go to a metaphysical practitioner unless you knew that that practitioner knew the principles, had learned to apply them, and had attained some proficiency in the application of these principles. Well, it is exactly the same with you. You cannot apply these principles in your home, in your community, in your nation, in the world at large, unless first of all you know them, and then secondly, attain some measure of proficiency in the application of the principles. Now, the most important principle revealed in the message of the Infinite Way is the most difficult for you to put into practice, and it is particularly difficult for those who have some metaphysical background. If anything, it is more difficult for them, and yet it is the most important principle of our message and the one that produces the greatest fruitage, the greatest healings, the greatest rejuvenated lives. That principle is impersonalization. When, we'll just start in our home. And we have a member of the family, everyone has, who is not living up to the highest standards of humanhood, much more of spiritual identity. Some member of the family who is unruly, disobedient, untruthful, untrustworthy, unfaithful, or some member of the family who is not up to the standard of health, physically or mentally or morally. And it is your function to bring about a change in that situation. It is your household. You should certainly permit nothing to enter your household that defileth or maketh a lie. That is, if you know how to exclude it, eliminate it. Nor would you tolerate an evil within your family circle if you knew how. to heal it, overcome it, change it. Nor would you tolerate a sick person in your household if you knew how to make them well. Then each of us has a responsibility in our own home. We are not necessarily responsible that everybody in our home be pure or that everyone in our home conform to our standards of life, since one of the benefits of living in free countries is that each one is an individual and has the right to live their own lives. But this is only true up to a certain point. We have liberty, but we don't have license. And there are things that we have no right to tolerate in our home, if we know how to prevent its being there or to eliminate it after it's there. And so the question comes, how can I change the atmosphere of my home? How can I improve it? Or even if it is humanly good, how can I lift it above human goodness into the demonstration of spiritual harmony, spiritual health, spiritual purity, spiritual abundance? And so we come to these three principles of the infinite way with which we have been working this week. The first of which is your remembrance that God constitutes individual being. It makes no difference whether at the moment we are looking at a person in sin or in disease or nearing death. The truth of being is that, and we are disregarding appearances now and judging righteous judgment, God constitutes individual being. And if we have 4, 5, or 6 members of our family, then God constitutes the being of every individual in our household. God is the quality. God is the quantity. God is the essence. God is the law unto every individual in this household. God constitutes their being. Therefore, their nature is pure. Their nature is godly. Their nature is good. Now, with that, we can turn to this, which is the most important step of all and the most important principle, that of impersonalization. Whether a member of the family is inflicted with sickness or sin, false appetite, unemployment, lack, bad disposition, hate, envy, jealousy, malice. This is the step, and it's difficult. You must impersonalize. You must be able to look at that individual, realizing that their nature is godly and that this sin, disease, whatever it may be, is not of that person, but is of, has its source in the carnal mind. This of which they are the victim, this which is manifesting itself in them, on them, through them, this actually is an activity or substance of the carnal mind or mortal mind or devil. Now, notice how that violates what you have been thinking of them. Or perhaps through your metaphysical background, how you've been looking into their consciousness to find the error so that you could remove it. Or how you were blaming their religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs. Or how in some way or other you were seeking to eradicate the error from them. Now you can't do that because the error never was a part of their being. God has constituted their being from everlasting to everlasting. For this reason, you must never use the name of a person in treatment, nor must you ever name the disease in treatment or the claim, because then you are personalizing it, you are fastening it right to the individual you would see freed. This then, this trait of character, this quality of character, this evil nature, this false appetite, this diseased condition, this is an activity, a substance of carnal mind. When you have impersonalized it thus, to the extent that you really have released the individual and can see that this is something not of them, but something that exists only in the carnal mind, now you take the final step or third point. There is only one mind, and therefore there is no carnal mind or mortal mind. That which you have termed carnal mind or mortal mind is not a mind at all. It is a belief in two powers. Once there is no belief in two powers, there is no carnal mind. In other words, if we could wholly remove from ourselves in this room the belief in two powers, there would be no human beings left in this room. There would only be children of God, or Adam in the Garden of Eden. Adam before they ate the fruit. All there is to humanhood is a belief in two powers. Without the belief in two powers, you have no human race anymore. You have only immortal beings. Of course, you go up to the mirror and say, I look the same. Yes, you probably would for a little while, but very quickly your appearance would change, because there'd be no anxiety in your face at all. There couldn't be, because there's only one power. You have nothing to be anxious about. If there is no power in birthdays, you don't even have to fear that 80th or 90th birthday. If there are not two powers, you don't have to fear infection, contagion, or, as some of our metaphysicians insist on doing, fearing other religions and people of other religions as if they had some weird and terrible power. I know one man, a metaphysical teacher, who is very certain that Catholics, Jews, Orientals, and nationals of all countries except the United States and Canada are the United States and England are the very devil. Or we Anglo-Saxons are God's perfect children. But all the rest you must protect yourself from. It's utter nonsense because there's only one power. Only one. And not only that, there is really only one being. Only one, infinitely manifested, but it is the one being. I hope you won't be surprised in the not too distant future when you see one flag at the top of every flagpole in the civilized world. Only one. And that will be the flag which will be the flag of all peoples. Under that flag, there will be the stars and stripes in the United States and the Union Jack over here and the tricolor in France. But that will only be the secondary flag, which denotes our separateness as an individual form of government under the one government. And then under that flag will be another. In the states it will be the state flag of each state. And over here it will be the dominion flag of each particular dominion, and so on throughout the world. Now, in the states we have now 50 flags. 50 state flags. We all fly them. But in looking at them, no one looks on them as if this is my state. Because actually it isn't. You live in one state this year, you may be living in another one next year, and you'd have a different state flag. And you don't change your allegiance when you change states. You just have that state flag up as a symbol. So the day will be when we will live in the States, or we will live in England or Australia or Africa, wherever we like, wherever it seems best for our interests at the moment, and we will not have to forswear any loyalties, because these flags will only represent the symbol, the sign of our particular state. But the government will rest with that government on top, representing that one flag. It may be United Nations or a body similar to them, but it will be a United States of the world. It has to be eventually, otherwise there will be no world at all. So we will break down these barriers of my nation or my church or a right church or a wrong church, and eventually we will find even within all of these churches a universal principle that will be taught. Now, back again to your home. Every individual in that home is constituted of God and has a godly nature, regardless of any appearance to the contrary. And the appearance, which is what we're dealing with, the particular form of evil, this is an activity or substance of carnal mind. Absolutely not a part of individual being. But there is no carnal mind, because there cannot be one infinite mind and another mind. Therefore, we only use the word carnal mind, the term carnal mind, to designate the belief in two powers. That's the only reason we use it. We could say, oh, all of this evil is a belief in two powers. It just makes it a little easier to boil it down to carnal mind or mortal mind. But here is the important point. Whereas Paul says the carnal mind is enmity against God, whereas some religions teach you must protect yourself from mortal mind, the truth is carnal mind isn't enmity against divine mind or God, because there is no carnal mind. There is only a belief in two powers, and a belief can't be a power unless somebody accepts the belief. And that's what gives it its power. In the same way, there is no such thing as mortal mind. Mrs. Eddy herself saw that, you know, when she said, mortal mind is a term denoting nothingness. Had we been able consistently to adhere to that statement, we wouldn't be busy protecting ourselves from mortal mind or from other influences, because we would know, how can a term denoting nothingness have action, power, or law? Now this is the foundation of our healing work, and it is the very thing that has kept my work going 30 years, and this particular work in its 14th year. This very principle that we must not judge, criticize, condemn anyone, any group, any nation, any religion. That doesn't mean that we're blind to their faults. It means that we must not see them as a power. Do you see the difference? I'm not blind to the fault of a political candidate who doesn't mean well by his nation or state. I'm not blind to it. And I certainly won't vote for him. But I do know that the quality of dishonesty, disloyalty, treason, whatever you call it, isn't power, because it's not of man. It isn't the man that's that way. He has accepted carnal mind, and now we'll help him be rid of it by knowing the truth. The carnal mind isn't a mind. It is a belief in two powers, and we don't have that belief. And one with God is a majority. Now, when you practice these three principles in your home, and you begin to see some changes, then you broaden your horizon. Then when you go out into your shops to market, to shop, when you go into your business office or factory, when you're driving on the road or in a bus, then you begin to practice these three principles on a wider scale. The moment you leave your home, you are faced with, so many pictures of the carnal mind. Drunkenness here, obscenity here, vice here, mean disposition here, poverty here, deformity here. You can't pass by on the other side of the road. You can't do that. You have to be the one that goes and ministers. Only you don't have to leave your seat or leave your task or whatever it is you're doing. All you have to do is get busy. God constitutes all being. Therefore, the nature of man is godly. Even the body is the temple of the living God. Body, mind, soul, and spirit. These are the temple of the living God. And this that I'm seeing or hearing, this is carnal mind, mortal mind, the arm of flesh, nothingness. It's a belief in two powers. Thank God I know enough to know that there is only one power, one mind, one life, one law. That law is spiritual law. What's the difference in the way you are treated by those around you? And you haven't treated anybody, remember. You haven't known their name or their fault. You haven't directed a treatment at them. All of this was a truth taking place within you about the appearance. You don't care who the appearance is or what the appearance is. It's an appearance. And you are knowing the truth about it. And the truth is, it's carnal mind, which isn't mind. It's a belief in two powers. And this is the arm of flesh or nothingness. And I can rest in that word. It will not take you long to discover that you're having different experiences in public than you ever had before. But at this point, I must caution you about something, both in your home and out. Be sure that all of this is taking place in secret. Never voice this to anyone. The Master tells us in the Sermon on the Mount that when you pray, pray in secret. If you don't, you may get some benefit from men, but you lose the benefit that comes from God or the Spirit. Your praying must be done in secret. No one must know that you are knowing the truth. Oh yes, the day comes when someone in your family says, you have changed, or you know something, and then if you find they're really serious and wanting to know, then you can begin to impart. But you have to be very, very sure that they really want to know. Not that they're going to let you unburden yourself and then they're going to ridicule it and probably deprive you. Now be very sure that you treat this as the pearl of great price. Be sure that if anyone comes to you for this, that virtually they're selling all that they have in order to buy it. In other words, that really and truly they're coming to you in humility, they're coming to you in earnestness, they're coming to you really and truly seeking, not curiosity seeking. You see, until a person is well grounded in these principles, it doesn't take much for them to lose the knowledge of them and the benefit of them. Because the very moment that people start to mock or scorn or deride, it begins to undermine your own faith. And unless you have really and truly witnessed it time and again, beheld its action, you can be made to waver. Many people have. It's like Lot's wife looking back. We sometimes look back if we aren't very, very sure that I know this principle so thoroughly, I've seen it work so often, that if you want to crucify me, you still can't make me change my mind. But since I don't want to be crucified, I don't tell this principle outside of my classes. And you see, I try to be sure that no one gets into the classes except those who are serious and who have proven it by their study. That is why I do not open the classes to the public. That is why I try to have those who are conducting the work find out before they admit a person to the class, are they serious? Are they really reading the books? Are they really trying to put them into practice? Are they availing themselves of tapes? Is this something serious in their life? Then I'm only too happy to share it, and I'll travel anywhere in the world to do it. Big city, small town, Some of you know I came here when we only had 30 people in a lecture audience. But before I give this principle, I want to be sure that those who are receiving it are actually hearing it with their ears and wanting to put it into practice and make it available in their own experience. Now, to begin with, if I hadn't had these 30 years of proof, you wouldn't be a bit interested in hearing this. In other words, you know, not necessarily that it's 30 years, but you know that it's many, many years that I've witnessed this, and therefore you know that I wouldn't be presenting it unless I knew that this is the principle that works. It works in the healing of disease. It works in the rejuvenation of an individual in their morals, in their finances, in their characteristics of humanhood. It goes further than that. It works in business affairs, professional affairs. It works in politics. It works in government. It works wherever it is applied seriously, sacredly, secretly, unselfishly. In other words, it won't work if you have a selfish motive. It will react upon oneself. In other words, it won't work if you are trying to elect a specific candidate to office. It won't work if you are trying to get a specific job for a certain person. It won't work if there's any selfishness, self-profit, or anything of a personal nature. Why? This is a universal principle of good, and it operates on an impersonal basis. In other words, if you were to apply this in your coming elections, you would have to first be sure that you are not determined that this candidate or that candidate will win, or that this party or that party will, even though you may be convinced that one is the right one. That may be all right as far as conviction is concerned. But when you sit down to do this work, you must forget your convictions. And you have to work from this standpoint. The only government I would like in my country is God government. The only government there should be here is God government. And there is a way to bring God government to my state, my city, my community, my nation. What way is that? Well, the only reason we ever have bad government is the belief in two powers. That carnal mind operating. But are there two powers? No. God constitutes individual being. God is the very nature of man. Therefore, man's nature is godly and good. And these qualities of evil, of ambition, of lust, of greed, these qualities of stupidity, ignorance, fear, these are all of carnal mind. But there is no carnal mind, for there is no mind but the one. And therefore, these have no channel of operation, no avenue of operation, no law to support them. These constitute the arm of flesh or nothingness. If you are faithful in that work, until you come to the very, very point of conviction, you will find that those men and women most nearly representing the divine qualities will be the ones elected. Of course, they won't be perfect. Neither are we. No one on this plane has attained the perfection of their Christhood. I do not claim to be perfect, Paul tells us, but forgetting those things that are behind. And so it is. We are not going to elect angels right away, but by knowing this, that the belief of good and evil, the belief in two powers, is not a power, is not operating, and has no consciousness in which, on which, or through which to operate, we will find that those men and women, regardless of their party, who most nearly represent the Christ ideal, will be those elected. And this is true whether in your government, or in your church, or in your business, in your corporations, whatever it may be, wherever there is such a thing as an election, this is the one way to start improving the government. Government of business or government of a community, government of a nation, government of banks. Now, you and you alone have the power to bring peace on earth, because you are the only people, speaking to the infinite way, on the earth at this present time who knows that praying to God to bring peace on earth won't succeed, because you never will change any existing condition on earth except in proportion as you nullify two powers, nullify the belief in two powers. It operates in the affairs of earth as it does in the healing of disease. The only practitioners who can consistently heal year in, year out, year in, year out, with a goodly measure of healings, is the practitioner who, regardless of how they work, can settle down within themselves and finally come to the realization God alone is power. And all this, whether you call it infection, contagion, heredity, whatnot, this isn't power. This is mortal mind, or the arm of flesh, or nothingness. Why? Because there is only one power. When the practitioner can come in his treatment or her treatment to that point of realization, the healing takes place. That is why we have had too little success with most of the mental healing work. All of that is aimed at having the power of mind do something to the power of error. In the last analysis, it can't, because error hasn't any power. It's just like praying to God to remove war. Can't, because the powers that make war aren't powers, and there is no power over another power. And this is the secret of the mystical religious life. There are not two powers. There's no power of God that can do something to evil. There is no power of truth that can do something to error. There is no power of mind that can do something to matter. There is only one power, and that is the power of mind or God, and that power is just as perfect in manifestation as it is in essence. If only our Infinite Way students will realize that the entire basis of our work is this secret. Don't try to use God. Don't try to use truth. Don't try to overcome evil, sin, disease, death, lack, limitation. You won't succeed any more than the religions of the world have succeeded. You can't do it. That is why these psychiatrists who are trying to find what the error is, they can't succeed. Never will, they never have. Had a meeting only, you see, two countries there are factions in two countries interested in outlawing the practice of psychiatry. And there was a meeting held last month in which psychiatrists agreed to let themselves be questioned by members of the medical profession, men who definitely were interested in stopping the practice of psychiatry. And the first question asked each of the psychiatrists was, is there a principle through which you heal or expect healing? Do you know of any healing principle in psychiatry? And each one answered, no. Well, is there a specific something on which you work, through which you hope to have these healings? No. Have you ever had a healing in your practice? No. Have you ever known another psychiatrist who had a healing in his practice? No. Well, that's the answer. That's published in the newspapers. No secret about it. Why? They're still trying to find the power of error and do something to it. It can't be done. If error were a power, it would be an eternal power, and you couldn't do anything about it. It either is an eternal power or it's none. It either has a law of God or it has none. If it has a law of God, why are you going to fight it? You're going to lose. You know, that was said in Scripture too. If these men be of God, let's not fight them. Now, if evil is of God, if it has a power, why fight it? You won't win. But if it isn't a power, you don't have to fight it. You have to know it's non-power. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And then Jesus looks at a crippled man and says, what did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk. Isn't that a strange thing to say to a cripple? What did hinder you? He could have answered, my paralysis. Just think of the Master saying to Lazarus, come forth. In other words, death isn't a power. Young maid, I say unto thee, arise. Death isn't a power. He didn't turn to God and say, I'll bring the power of God down to heal you or to raise you. In fact, at the tomb of Lazarus, he even said, I don't even have to pray, but for the sake of those around here who still believe in prayer. But all he said was, Lazarus, come forth. Blind man, open your eyes. Not a word about I'll have God open your eyes. Now, I know that at some time or other you have all believed that some of your sickness had to do with God. Well, just think now, if in the days of typhoid fever you had believed that, and now they've wiped out typhoid fever, and you haven't got God to blame anymore. Why doesn't God cause typhoid fever now? Well, it's almost here now. Tuberculosis is virtually wiped out. In the States, it's very close to being entirely wiped out. I don't know what it is here. And just think, nobody will be able to blame God. And the metaphysicians won't even be able to believe the consumptive, who they said was consumptive because they were sensual. Now even the sensuality won't give them tuberculosis. Do you see the ridiculousness of all this? We were blaming God for calling our little babies home, and now God doesn't call them home anymore. He lets them live. Nonsense. In the days when doctors were ignorant, or more ignorant, of materia medica rules, laws, and lost patients because of their ignorance or because they hadn't yet discovered the secrets of medicine, oh, God was to blame. Now doctors are enlightened and they don't lose so many cases, and all of a sudden God's gotten better natured. Instead of, when I was a boy, the life expectancy in the United States was 49 years. And now it's 67 for men and 72 for ladies. That's because they haven't got so much work to do, they have it easy. Do you think God has gotten good-natured that he lets us live now to 67 as against 49? Or do you think it's because Materia Medica knows more about how to keep people alive, and metaphysics has also contributed something to that? So, let us at least open our minds to this. God has no pleasure in your dying. Turn ye and live. God never had any pleasure in your dying. And therefore God's never been responsible for a death in the history of the world. And the only reason that death has ever taken place is our ignorance of spiritual law. The ignorance of the fact that there is only one power and there is no power in infection or contagion or heredity except such power as universal consent gives it. Now don't make the mistake of blaming your patient or a member of your family because they are under some belief of ignorance or sin or disease. Always remember that whatever belief you and I are suffering from, it isn't your belief or mine, it's a universal belief, which we have temporarily picked up or accepted or yielded to. Never blame anyone. And never try to make them better than they are. You won't succeed. And you'll give yourself heartaches. No use telling a person to be more loving or more generous or more forgiving, because they can't be anything more than they are now until you improve them by realizing that those qualities never were of them. They were of the carnal mind, and they aren't power and never were power, and they only operated because of the universal belief in two powers. Is that clear? Watch this. If you see a man stealing, don't call him a thief. Realize instantly this is a belief in two powers operating, but it can't operate because there aren't two powers. You not only heal yourself, you're loving your neighbor as yourself. And that's important. Because remember, if for any reason you should be stealing and anyone should see it, the one thing you would want is for them to know that you aren't a thief, that you are responding to an impersonal impulse, and that it wasn't power, and the chances are, right in the midst of the act, they would stop or you would stop. There isn't a one of us who has a fault, and we all have them. But there isn't a one of us that wouldn't appreciate it if our family, the members of our family who know our faults, instead of blaming us or trying to reform us, would silently, secretly, sacredly know this truth. This is an impersonal belief in two powers. Just an impersonal claim of a power apart from God. But there are no powers apart from God. There is no power but the one. There is no mind but God. Therefore, carnal mind, mortal mind, is not enmity against God. It's nothing. I sometimes find it a little easier just to pick on Paul. I can have a good time picking on him and saying, Paul, you're all wrong. Carnal mind isn't enmity against God at all. And by the time I get through with that, I really believe it. Carnal mind isn't enmity against God. Carnal mind is a belief in two powers. And it's a universal belief. It isn't mine. It's a universal belief. It just has no person in which, on which, through which to operate. You watch what this secret of impersonalization does for you. Watch what it does in the experience of those around you. Watch what it does in your healing work. Because you'll understand why the Master could say, resist not evil. Those are hard words, resist not evil. You've got to have a reason. When you say resist not evil, you better know why. Because evil isn't a power. It's a universal belief in two powers. Arm of flesh, nothingness. It will do miracles for you in your own life, in healing, and the moment that you rise above merely living in this truth for your own sake or your family and start to apply it in your local governments, neighborhood governments, city governments, national governments, and in all things that affect the national and international life, even the weather. Weather responds to this. The weather responds to this. We have proven that definitely. Weather responds to this. Why? You see, weather is not something, weather is not something that is external to you. Weather is not something that happens. Weather is an activity of mind. And because there is only one mind, weather is perfect. And the only reason that we behold any imperfect weather is carnal mind. There is a belief in two powers, which makes good weather and bad weather. Now, there aren't two powers. I don't mean by this that you should have any idea at all of working for all sunshiny days. Because there must be, in our experience, a variety of types of weather, but none of it needs to be bad. None of it needs to be destructive. None of it needs to be of a nature that takes life or produces injury. But this we prove locally before we get to the point of proving it more widely. I only say it to you because we have proven it locally and have prevented destructive weather and injurious forms of weather, and proven that they can be dissolved just with the understanding that weather exists as an activity of mind. If you don't think so, try to think of weather without a mind to know that there is weather. In Zen Buddhism, there is this passage. If there is a flag waving in the breeze, is the flag waving or is the wind or breeze waving it? And the answer is neither. Mind is waving it. And mind is, because without mind there would be no breeze, there would be no wind. There can't be an activity outside of mind. Try to figure how there could be an activity outside of mind. Which mind? Well, there is only one. You have no choice. There is only one mind. And when we are not beholding perfection, it is because of a universal belief in two minds or two powers. Do you follow that? There is only one mind. It is a universal mind. It is the source of all action, all law, all cause. When we behold anything unlike the activity of a spiritual law or life, it is only because of the acceptance of this belief of two powers, two laws, two minds. Now I realize, of course, that you cannot possibly, except those of you who have been studying long enough so that this is only a sort of putting a seal on your understanding, but for most, you cannot grasp this or apply it until you have studied and practiced it, until it becomes a very part of your being. And so again, I'm going to urge on you that you hear these tapes as much as you can until you do have this. And then I think that in a form you will recognize, it will be in the new book, The Art of Spiritual Healing.